Is it the first time you're here in Athens?
Yes, the first time to visit.
How do you like the city so far?
Well, the first thing you notice is the language is very different than most of the languages that I speak, such as French, Spanish, Italian, and German. It seems similar to Spanish, I suppose. Sometimes you hear and you're like, oh, it sounds like Spanish, and then it's like, just like my in-laws are like all the time, but I'm like, but this I don't understand really anything. I think I understand some things, and that's always exciting for me to learn at least some little things, like how to ask for things and how to say hello and thank you and things like this. But I've realized that I learned the Greek alphabet when I was in college.
Really?
Because I was in a fraternity, and so I learned all the Greek letters.
What do you remember of the Greek letters now?
Alpha, beta, chi, delta, epsilon,
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta.
Yeah, gamma.
Sounds familiar, yes.
Of course. Epsilon, sigma is very important at the end of so many words.
Do you think that singing is different, speaking of languages, to different languages technically?
You know, that is a really wonderful question. I find that the base of my technique and the way I sing is basically the Italian style. And I have to adapt to all the different languages, the Italian style of singing with the French style of just style, which is different. The way you phrase things, the way you shadow some of the words. I love to word paint, so I like to taste the differences between the different languages as well. Even in German, I mean, I just, all these wonderful sounds that you can really taste. Actually, I find, of course, you need to support even more, because a lot of consonants, you lose air. So you have explosive consonants such as P, S, T, D. These are spots, in the middle of a phrase where you have to be careful sometimes to regulate the release of that air so that you give enough to project those sounds, but also to sing the entire phrase without running out of air. And English also is a Germanic language, Anglo-Saxon language, where a lot of air is lost.
The English
You're talking about like American
Yeah. Yes.
Well, actually, we're taught in diction class not to anticipate the r. So, of course, you have to, a lot of words begin with r. So it's like run, but you go as quickly to the vowel. And the same, you sing the vowel as long as you can, and then just sing the r at the end. So it doesn't sound like the whole word doesn't sound like like purple, like purple rain. You see, that would be a classical way of singing Princess Great too.
I love the song. I love it.
But just an example of, I think most singing should be on the vowels. So the sound is always continuing so that you can still sing this legato line.
Who is your favorite composer to sing?
I think the best composer for my voice and my abilities, my talents, and who wrote, I think, the best way for the voice, for me personally, is Gaetano Donizetti. The roles that I sing, such as Nemorino, Ernesto, Roberto de Vereux, I mean, these roles are like perfect for me, for my personality as well. And so I enjoy very much singing the noble roles. And the other roles that I talk about are like Tonio in La Fille de Régiment, or Nemorino, or Ernesto. They're sort of semi-serio, which is sort of serious, but also comic. And they're very youthful roles. And I like to maintain the joy of singing, but also bringing a bit of romanticism into it. So I like romantic comedy kind of guy, like my favorite films. So,
what is your favorite film?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I think that one's impossible to answer.
I hate it when people ask, what is your favorite book?
Yeah,
What's your favorite?
I mean, so many great ones, but one that for some reason pops to my mind is there's something about Mary.
Now, we have a tenor here in this interview that has an amazing voice and easiness with the high notes. How do you deal with this? Because everybody wants to hear the secret of the high note.
You know, I think...
but even when you sing, even when you speak,
yeah,
I hear the voice is so beautifully placed.
I've learned to do that over the years, to really sort of speak the way I sing, because I always tend to sing more healthily than you normally speak. If you're speaking like on your chords and everything is like you can hear the it's like, for me, especially very high tenor, it's going to lower your voice, literally. I don't know why, but it's pushing the pharynx down and it's lowering. Everything is basically going lower. So it's natural that the voice will also go lower. So if I feel that I'm caressing the voice even as I'm speaking, I will caress the voice as I'm singing. I really think that the voice is something that is given to you at birth or at conception, really. Your genetic makeup is going to be like your voice. But it also, through your vocal development, speech plays a big part in the way your voice develops when you're really small. So as speech is introduced to the voice, you start to develop habits. Some of them are good habits, some of them are bad habits. Think of this when an infant cries. It is like you can see their entire torso fill up, and it's like they are getting a big wind up to make a huge sound, and they do. It is like, you know, it's like, and that actually is the closest to the most correct way of breathing and making a vocal sound.
And they do sounds very high tonically, as far as...
Normally, yes, because they haven't reached puberty yet. Yeah, so they haven't matured yet. But yeah, generally those sounds are very high, and they're very well supported with air. You need to test in a healthy way the extreme parts of your voice, especially me, because I sing a lot of extreme high notes, but there are a lot of roles where I have to sing down to low A flat as well. So low A flat up to high contro re, like high D, is super extreme.
This is the range of the repertoire or the range of the voice when you work out?
That is the range of certain roles that are written, that I have performed.
Impressive.
There are certain donzelli parts of Rossini. We call them donzelli based on who they were written for, where he was almost like a baritenor donzelli, where it's like this baritenor voice, like baritone tenor voice, which was very low. And I believe that then in the upper register, they sang mostly in falsetto. So now, because since we had singers like Nourri and Dupré, who mastered this ut de poitrine, this chest voice of the high C, now tenors today, if you cannot sing a high C in full voice, then you're kind of considered a little bit like, oh, well, they don't have a very good high C. But of course, there are plenty of wonderful tenor roles that are written not above A natural or B flat.
How did it all begin for you? When did you say that this production really opens it for me?
Yeah, I mean, I was super young. I was 21 years old when I won the Metropolitan Opera competition. So from that already, there was like, you had this impression like that was the moment. I mean, that for me, I literally, when I went out to sing the Cabaletta of Tonio from La Fille du Régiment with all the high C's in it, I literally went out and it's you know, I have this amazing music, and so I go out there and the audience is clapping, and then I finish and I'm like just feeling this music, and I'm like, I literally did a John tenor moment, and I literally went, I am here, like that, you know. And at 21 years old, singing on the Met stage, and 5 months later, I was in the Met Young Artist Program. So I finished 4 years of college. I was barely 22 years old. And I went to the Met, and it was being in the Met program where I got to see all the great singers coming from all over the world to come to New York and sing there. And the singers and coaches that I worked with there were huge in my development.
You consider yourself generally as a lucky person. Would you say that for you?
I mean, lucky. You can call it luck. You can call it blessings. Blessings from God. I mean, this is just like, how has my life been so blessed? This is something that I live with, this idea, this appreciation, this feeling of thanksgiving,
Maria Kallás, do you ever have her as a reference? I mean, she's a soprano, of course, but...
I think to be an opera singer today and, first of all, not know who is Maria Kallás, to not know at least some of her recordings is like crazy. I mean, Maria is like the face of opera. She revolutionized things in the 20th century, where she became such a singing actress that almost people forgot about the singing part. For her to be an icon in what we could call part of the golden age of the 20th century of opera, interpreting Puccini and Verdi and Bellini, in her own way, in a way, she was like, boom, that's the way I do it. Take it or leave it. No matter what, I'm going to give 110% to every performance. And she's like a lioness. Mm-hmm. And to not take that as an example of how to take risks for the sake of art, I think she stands as a great example to me for that.
Beauty of sound or truthful interpretation of the role? What is the priority?
I mean, it's a combination of both for me. I think when I'm singing something and I'm not giving it a truthful, sincere interpretation, I'm just singing it because it's a fun song or it's a fun aria. If it's non-specific to the text or the character, then I'm actually sort of disappointed in my own performance. Because for whatever reason leading up to the performance, I either just didn't take the time to really research the piece and make decisions about how I want to interpret it. I mean, it's part of the learning process, but it seems to be, for some reason, one of the last parts of my part of the process, which my wife is completely like, John, you do completely the opposite of what you should do. You should start with the text, start with interpretation, and then you will sing it the way you feel it should be interpreted. But I tend to let the music guide me, yes. And that's what a lot of singers do. And in fact, a lot of times if I do a master class now, a lot of times they are, singers, they're young, just like I was 30 years ago. They are sort of interpreting the aria as the way the music is guiding them, even if their interpretation is completely the opposite of what they're saying, or what the expression should be, or what is the situation in the opera, for example. You learn a piece, you learn the music, you learn the notes, you learn the rhythms, you learn the words. Okay, that's the basic part. You have that done. Now, let's work on interpretation. I find myself, when I work with young singers, that's what I feel I have the best to offer them.
Actually, Maria Kallás debuted some of her roles here.
I understand that. Yeah, that's amazing.
And I wanted to know, what do you think of the place here? How do you feel to sing in this theater that is historical in the sense of Maria Kallás and really a big history? And also, how do you feel here technically, the acoustics?
I think, unfortunately, in this situation, I'm going to have to answer your question with a question. I'm curious to know with the way it's constructed now, where we have wood balconies and wooden walls like this, sort of plain looking, not very ornate, like a typical European opera house or theater, not like a vaudeville theater at all. We have the seats that have velvet, the carpet on the floor. So of course my question is, I wonder how much more acoustically conducive it was back when Maria was singing here compared to what it is now. Because of course with wood and the panels and everything, it helps quite a bit, but the velvet is going to absorb some sound. So it's a combination of, so that's my question. I'd be curious to know what it looked like in the days that Maria was singing here. And also right now we have like a platform built over the pit. So I'm not exactly sure if I were singing from back there, from behind the proscenium, if the acoustic would be different than actually singing out here under the proscenium or almost in front of the proscenium. And that changes, scientifically, it changes very much how the sound of the voice bounces around in the hall. Granted, this is not an enormous theater either. To me, any place with 4 walls and a roof and a floor should be acoustically okay to sing. I've sung in huge places and amphitheaters where it's amazing. You just have like, you know, this behind you, but the voice just somehow, the signs, I mean, granted, when you turn your head, you know, the sound is different and it should sound different. If you turn the head like this and it sounds the same, there's a good chance it's being amplified somehow.
Do you think that opera has a place? Would you suggest to somebody who is young and comes to you and tells you, I want to work as an opera singer, but somebody who is very young, I mean, who begins really now, would you say that go for it?
That actually depends on the individual. If you can tell that this person is serious about singing and they have a great talent, of course I'm going to take notice of that more than someone who might have a mediocre talent. And unfortunately, I may have to say to them, maybe you should consider doing something else, not because of necessarily the level of talent, but because of what the business does to you. But then it leads to the next part of the discussion, which is, in what form is this art form going to be preserved?
What do you think? What form?
Well, I think when you think about the history of opera, I mean, it's existed since early 1600s. I mean, we're already 400 years into this. There are great works that have survived literally hundreds of years. In the way it is written, presenting it in the way it was intended originally, telling the story, the actual story, and not making up a new story. I feel you can update an opera, whatever, change the time period. You can change the place. But when you see an opera and you don't understand anything that you see, so it's completely unrelatable, then I think you've lost your audience. I think this is like, nobody's interested in going and not understanding. I think that especially new people who have never been to the opera or to the symphony, I think we want to introduce them to something that is
meaningful,
something that is culturally valuable. So, you know, you bring everybody here and you want to present something that is representative of the piece, or you want to present a piece that is relatable to the public. I think to ignore certain basic elements of the story is wrong. The only way to make it sustainable is to maintain a high level of costumes, costume design, set design. Keep the prices what they are, what they were, because it's an event to go see production. It's a production. It's not, you're not just going to the town square to see a juggler. You know, maybe you throw them a few coins. No, this is not that. And it's part of our culture that I think is not only worth sort of saving or sustaining, but I think it's vital to our existence.
I hear that your wife is also your teacher. How does this work? How do you make this happen in a functional way?
We had the same voice teacher for 13 years. And then when he passed away, I think I took some lessons with a few other teachers, but just nothing really stuck. Nothing was really like that kind of technique. But because Lynette is my wife, Lynette Tapia, we had the same teacher. We kind of spoke the same language. And she also, of course, all the years that we've been together, she understands me and my voice better than anyone. And I don't know how or why, but I think my wife definitely has lived at least 2 other previous lives. And she's a very intuitive person. I don't know how she knows certain things. She has a sensitivity, a sensibility to know when something is wrong, whether it's with me or our daughter or even our pet, our dog. She just has this
intuition.
Yeah, and it's not just a mother's intuition. It's a special intuition that she has. And so she's like, I've always said that she's like my guardian angel. And so I treat her as though she's my guardian angel. I'm one of the luckiest people to be able to fall in love with, not only to meet, but to fall in love with my guardian angel. And she's just there always to help me and build me up and to protect me.
Does your wife follows you everywhere you go for singing reasons during the year, or you pick and choose some of the places to come with you?
You know, we have to be careful when she comes, because my wife, she is the balance of everything between home life and our professional lives. So she has to spend time at home with our daughter and our dog, and then she also likes to spend time with me. So a lot of times, especially if I am premiering a role, if it's a new role for me, it's very important for me to have her there, because she is my eyes and my ears, because she can hear what I'm doing, she can see what I'm doing, and give me advice on body position, or even the way I'm singing. She'll tell me very often to caress the voice. Remember, ride the air.
Yes.
And don't drive the voice.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years from now?
In 10 years, well, I have already thought about my retirement. I think that at the age of 60, which is only in less than 9 years now, I think I would like to go out on my terms, and maybe I will just do some kind of big 60th birthday gala for John Osborne. Maybe I'll invite my favorite friends that I know in the business, hire an orchestra, and just make a big gala performance, celebrate my 60th birthday. And after that, I think I don't need to sing. I don't need to perform anymore. I think I want to live like in peace. It's such a rigorous lifestyle. So much traveling. Yes, it's exciting. I get to travel the world and see amazing things. I get to be in Athens for 1 week. Other people, they never get to go to Athens, Greece. Or they're saying, oh, then you should open a school of bel canto. Something like that. And I'm like,
we'll see.
Maybe.
So, in any case, I wish to you all the best for what comes as a wish in your mind and in your heart. And it was a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming here for this interview. Very nice.